Sarah Steiner, our thanks to both of you there in Memphis. And here with us now, retired Los Angeles Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. She's also the author of the book, Black and Blue, The Creation of a Social Advocate. Cheryl, always great to have you on. Thanks so much for being with us today. As someone who once supervised other officers and has been in that position, what stands out to you in these videos?
Well, the fact that no one intervened, that no one stepped in and said, okay, that's enough. I mean, you don't punish people, and I know that that happens. It's an unspoken, unwritten rule. At the end of a foot pursuit, officers put in work. They get in a zone, they get involved in what I like to refer to as a wolf pack mentality, and everybody who arrives on scene, even when the person is in cuffs and in custody, wants to get in a lick and a kick and a hit. And so all of that is going to be problematic. And I'll tell you what else is problematic for me. There's been a lot of talk about transparency, and while I appreciate what Chief Davis has done initially, there were more than 5 officers on scene who did nothing. And when you acquiesce to misconduct, you're committing police misconduct. And now we know that there were 2 sheriffs on scene who she didn't call the sheriff next door and say, hey, by the way, let me give you a heads up. 2 of your officers, 2 of your deputies were on scene. And so, you know, the question now that begs to be asked and answered is, how transparent is Chief Davis really being? I understand she serves at the pleasure of the mayor, and she has to do what she has to do now to save her own butt. This is not the first time those officers acted the way that they did, and I know that because they did it too freely. They did it too readily, and they knew that everybody on scene and who showed up would be okay with that activity.
That is such an interesting point. And kind of to that point, these officers were wearing body cameras. They knew they had cameras on them. They knew this was being recorded, and yet they still behaved this way. And this is a different situation than the police beating of Rodney King in 1991, where the officers were unaware they were being filmed. In this case, the officers absolutely knew that they were being filmed. They were filming themselves. What does that say to you?
Well, it lets you know that they're savvy, they're sophisticated, and they did what they did knowingly. They were creating an audio record for the excessive use of force that did not need to happen. They were creating an audio record to manufacture probable cause. Oh, he put his hands on Mark's gun. He got out the car, and I was just like, dude, are you okay? And he punched me. He was driving reckless. They're saying all this stuff to one another after the fact to try to substantiate and justify this use of force. And then we know they went to the mother's home and told her that her son had been involved in a DUI, another lie, had been taken to the hospital, and she couldn't see him because he's going to get booked after that. They knew this young man was not going to be booked. He was in too much pain and was going to require hospitalization. And so everything that they did speaks to their mindset, speaks to this is how they get down.
And walk us through the procedure for body camera use. Is that a nationwide? Should there be a nationwide standard? My understanding is it's department to department, right?
Well, that's why everything is so helter-skelter, because, you know, police departments act and move differently, and, you know, police chiefs have total autonomy. They just determine and decide how their officers are going to comport themselves and what policy they're going to institute with regards to the body cam and everything else that these officers do. And I think that's part and parcel as to why you have officers with 2 years on the job work in a specialized unit where they call themselves scorpions. That would never happen on the Los Angeles Police Department with someone that was so inexperienced.
And I want to talk about Scorpion for a second, because just for people who, just so you know at home, that's the specialized unit that they were a part of, and it was tasked with patrolling high crime hotspots and focusing on gang-related crimes, drugs. But this was for an alleged reckless driving stop, which we should remind everyone they can't find any evidence for that at this point. Is it typical for a specialized unit to even handle a traffic offense like that? And also more broadly, what are your thoughts on one of these more specialized units?
Well, they're the police, and so, you know, they can get involved in police activity if they want to. Their primary function is to be proactive. They're not tied to a radio, so they're not out there seeing the man and seeing the woman on a radio call. They're free to get involved in activities that a patrol officer wouldn't have the time to do. So it's not something that they're prohibited from doing, but these are what I call elephant hunters. These are Billy Badass. These are the guys that kick butt and take names. And we saw them do just that when they approached Mr. Nichols, this wasn't about a traffic stop. You saw how the officer pulled one of the cars, pulled in head on, which would be tactically unsafe to do in most instances. And so these were just bad actors who are out there doing what they do all the time. And I can't believe that the police chief didn't pay attention to those complaints that were coming in about this unit. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And so she's got some splaining to do.
Yeah, and that's likely where this heads now, right? Where was that supervision? Where was that oversight? Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey, thanks so much for your analysis there. We appreciate it.
Thank you.